strap in and set your coordinates for a journey through the stars and beyond. I'm your Captain Joe, and I am so happy you're joining us on this mission. This week on Book Lounge by Libby, we're diving headfirst into the vast, strange, and thrilling universe of science fiction. From mind bending technology to alien civilizations, our guests, Ken Liu, Alex Segura, and Daniel H. Wilson, will take us behind the scenes of what it takes to craft worlds that feel both unimaginable and familiar. We'll explore what first drew them into the genre, how they turn big ideas into gripping stories, and the secret engines that power their sci fi imaginations. And stick around for segment 2, where our space explorers will give you sci fi book recs to max out the storage on your to be read list. Whether you're a longtime sci fi traveler or boarding for your first interstellar adventure, prepare to warp into a conversation that's equal parts rocket fuel and storytelling magic. So let's beam on in. Well, Alex, Ken, Daniel, thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you for having
Thanks.
us.
Absolutely.
For our audio only listeners, and if you're not, watching the video, go to the Libby app YouTube channel to watch the video and see all of our backgrounds. If you could each go around and just give us your name and what you're working on right now so folks can put voice to name. I'll let the alphabet be my guide. So Alex, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Daniel and Ken.
Sure. Alex Segura. I'm a writer of novels and comics. My next book is a Daredevil crime novel starring the Marvel superhero Daredevil. It's called Enemy of My Enemy. It comes out in March from Hyperion Avenue. In terms of sci-fi, I've written my share. Dark Space, which I co-wrote with Rob Hart, who is the author of The Warehouse and The Paradox Hotel, among other things. It's our big high concept for it is Star Trek meets Jean Le Carré spy novel. And so that was a lot of fun. I also write the flagship Star Wars title for Marvel Comics, and I've written in the Star Wars universe. I wrote a Poor Dameron novel in 2020.
You weren't kidding. Your fair share for sure.
Yeah.
Daniel, welcome.
Hey, I'm Daniel H. Wilson, and the novel I'm talking about today that's come out most recently is called Hole in the Sky, and it's kind of a native take on first contact with an alien entity. And so my background is I started out as a roboticist. I'm from Oklahoma, Cherokee citizen. A lot of native stuff gets into my writing. And the novel before that, I wrote a sequel to the Andromeda Strain, authorized sequel working with the Crichton Estate. And my first novel was called Robopocalypse. So you can pretty much figure out what's going to go on in that novel. I write a lot of science fiction, a lot of some what has been called techno tradish instead of techno thrillers. Like sort of techno thrillers with a little indigeneity. So that's my background.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Invention of your own space in the space. Like I think it's always cool to see that as it's happening and as it's, forming along the way and those who come with it. And Ken, welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Ken Liu. Most readers know me from the short story collection, The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories, or the epic fantasy series starting with The Grace of Kings. But the book I'm going to talk about today is All That We See or Seem. It's a techno thriller starring a hacker named Julia Z, who saves the world using her unique skills with AI. I call it a techno thriller because even though it's kind of sci-fi adjacent, almost everything in the book is actually already possible. So it's not really speculative in that sense. And I have a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to the conversation.
Not horrifying at all to hear that everything in it is already possible. See how scared I leave today. And this is off the back of just recording our horror episode for Halloween. I'm like, I think this is the scarier conversation. But to kick things off, what first drew each of you to storytelling just in general? And what was your intro into science fiction, techno thrillers, kind of like the space as a whole? Was it a book? Was it film? Or just a specific moment that comes to mind where you went, oh, this is it? And Daniel, I'm going to come to you first.
Sure. I just grew up reading tons of science fiction, mostly short stories. And at the same time, I was learning to code. And I kind of thought they were similar, right? You arrange symbols on a page, and in one case, the human mind compiles it, and in the other case, the computer compiles it. But I'm also a very emotional reader. I think I first burst into tears in front of people reading Where the Red Fern Grows, or Flowers for Algernon gets me every time. And so that's what really kind of fascinated me. Is I was like, I want to make people feel emotions, or even just awe. Like when you get to the end of the 9 billion names of God, and you're like, what? So it started out with short stories because it's like a mousetrap. You set it up and then it sort of snaps closed, and there's a twist, kind of like old Twilight Zone episodes and stuff like that. But my career didn't take off immediately at age 17, writing derivative short stories and give them to my English teacher. So as a consolation prize to science fiction, I studied science, and eventually, after I had built robots for 5 or 6 years in a basement at Carnegie Mellon, uh, somebody was interested in reading what I had to write about that stuff. So that was kind of my journey.
What a fascinating journey though, to have that like desire to write and desire to share, and then also go the like, well, yeah, I'm 17 and no one's gonna pick up this manuscript from me, but I also found passion for what you were reading, what you were writing to kind of translate
Well,
over.
robots are robots. They're
Yeah,
they're in science fiction, but they're also out there. So if you like
right.
robots enough, you can find a way to to get involved with robotics
You can work your way into robots one way or another.
one way or the other.
Ken, how about you?
Like Daniel, I have a technical background. I was a software engineer for a number of years, and later on, I became a lawyer. And both of those professions ended up being a big part of my storytelling. A lot of my stories are about the way law shapes people, and the way code shapes machines, and they're not all that different, to be honest. And in terms of getting into what I write, my journey was pretty circuitous in that way. I read very widely. I enjoyed reading all kinds of books. I didn't particularly have a genre in mind when I started writing. It's just that I enjoy writing stories in which something metaphorical is taken literally. And so sometimes those metaphors are literalized using sci-fi and sometimes using fantasy and magic. But all of my stories really are about taking something that we think about in a metaphorical sense and then playing with them and making them literally true. And it's just a lot of fun. It's just kind of the way my brain works.
Yeah. And an interesting path, like you said, circuitous to find the things you like and how you enjoy bringing them to life in your own voice. Now, Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, very similar stories. I think sometimes as a kid, I didn't think I was a writer, but I was doing storytelling stuff. I remember that sense of wonder when you read a story and you figure out the twist before it's revealed. For me, it was Hound of the Baskervilles, figuring out who the killer was before the twist, before the author reveals the twist. In terms of sci-fi, I think The Time Machine was probably my earliest exposure to sci-fi, and Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, and a lot of the Asimov robot stories, and that really opened up a lot of just story space for me. And I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I was also very practical, so I went into journalism, which was a way to write but make a living theoretically, and then I moved into publicity and marketing, where you are working those muscles, and I learned a lot about deadlines and filling space. And I think what it also gave me, journalism in particular, was that fearlessness of going up to people and just talking, which just serves you well in terms of being like public facing and an author. For me, it was always, author driven stories about sci-fi worlds that were very tied to a specific author, but then also big franchises. Like I was a big Star Trek and Star Wars kid. And so, um, particularly novels in those worlds. Like I think there was an era for
Mhm.
Star Wars where there were not, you know, we're such a bounty of content now, but there was a time when we relied on the expanded universe novels and
Yeah.
adaptations, and Star Trek was very similar too, like that space between TOS and TNG. I would read the novels, and I remember going to this one particular used bookstore in Miami and just leaving with a stack every couple months of stuff. And you learn a lot about plot, especially when it's like expanded universe weaving through established IP, you learn a lot about plot and characterization and how do you make something feel like it matters, even though it's part of a bigger narrative and it doesn't necessarily change the character. So that's been of use to me in comics and in my own like work for hire work. But Dark Space in particular owes a lot to Star Trek and that kind of narrative.
Absolutely, I could see that. It is interesting to think of like the novelizations that existed, especially around IP like Star
Mm,
Trek. I'm a Charmed fan. They did it for Charmed
yeah.
too in the early days. Like I think of
And
all of
Buffy,
those.
yeah.
Right,
Hmm.
they all had it, and it's just like, well, right, because we didn't produce content at the volume that we do today.
Right.
But it's also interesting to see how to work with established property. You don't have to do all of the character work because something else may have already done it, where you get to just kind of like create an adventure almost.
Hmm.
Now, what about everything that you all write keeps you coming back for more? What keeps you you all write in a variety of realms, but what kind of brings you back to where you found your interests in every time you write? You know, whether it is the work for hire, whether it is a specific genre or just in general, what makes it keep going for you? Is there a moment or an interaction that stands out or just something within? I'm doing the look of like, Ken, I'm gonna start with you.
Uh, okay. For me, it's really love of story.
Mm,
I think I'm just sort of a greedy person in the sense that I feel like living one life is not enough, right? We're given this one life, and the closest thing we can get to living multiple lives is to make up other stories and live in those worlds. And I love that experience. I love that experience of imagining worlds, coming up with new stories, living another lifetime and then sharing that with readers. I can never get tired of it. I feel like being a writer is just this great way of getting the most out of life. You get to use that time to live multiple lifetimes on one, and I can never get tired of it. It's something that just brings me back every single time. There's nothing better than the joy of making something new and then making it so real that you feel like you know that world as well as you know the real world.
yeah, yeah. That's really something to sit with. Daniel, Alex, either of you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just as I get older, and I've sort of lived more life, I've had kids, I've been married. There's all these sort of only a finite number of ways to like be human, and only so many sort of human experiences, right? Like, relationships in terms of I'm an uncle, I'm a father, I'm a son. And so when I'm going through my life and I start feeling big emotions, then I know something interesting is happening. And it's sort of like I'm mining my own head. And so, getting into science fiction is great because you can use all these science fictional metaphors to convey whatever it is you're dealing with. Like I have a short story called "The Blue Afternoon That Lasted Forever," that is about basically realizing that raising a kid is just letting go of the kid a little more every day until they're gone, which is sort of
Wow.
really sad. But also, you don't want to hang on to the kid because then you'll destroy the thing that you love. And so, of course, they bring in black holes, right? Primordial, pinprick, like a mountain or a moon, in a pinprick sized black hole. And, I've got black holes flying around and I got to go into the science of it. And like Alex is saying, just call anybody up, call up NASA, ask them all about the black holes. Um, but really, and the other thing, this is interesting, it's sort of the corollary of what Ken was talking about is you also get to memorialize your own life and people and experiences you've had in your work and trap it there and save it. So like that story has the literal bedtime routine that I had with my daughter when she was 4. And these are really ephemeral things. As kids get older, these routines change like almost daily. And it's just really special to me to be able to capture that. And it's so personal too, right? And nobody else knows necessarily, but it's what makes that writing special to me. And then of course it's for an audience of obviously whoever wants to read it, everybody. But finding those sorts of those meaningful relationships, stuff that's got me feeling big feelings, and then yeah, and using science fiction to convey it, that's my goal. The feelings are the point at this time. It used to be with Robo Apocalypse, I would just blow stuff up, people's arms and legs flying off, robots just crushing people. I like that. That's fun. That's spectacle. But these days I lean a lot more toward, telling stories that matter to me.
Yeah, and the thought of immortalizing parts of your life, those really important things that it's mainly that's the moment where it's like truly just for you to go like this lives as it exists the moment I wrote it
Well, and
forever.
there's veracity to it, right? So like
Yeah.
as my kids get older, the kids in my novels get older. Like Hole in the Sky has a Cherokee dad who's living in Oklahoma who's got a teenage daughter that he's reuniting with, and like all that dialogue, that like mean teenager dialogue, that's fresh, that's coming fresh, like hot out of the oven right there. So so doing that and making sense of your own life and also being able to really accurately sort of tell a story with real details, all the real stuff. It's a win-win, right?
Oh, absolutely. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's tapping into whatever I'm obsessing with at the moment. Whether it's I wrote two murder mysteries set in the comic book industry, one in the '70s, one in the modern day, and I got to weave in actual comic pages into the story and Secret Identity and Alter Ego, and that was just a love letter to that world, and being able to weave through established history. And I think it's trite, but the idea of like write the story that you want to see on the shelves that only you can write is a real guiding light for me. Like, what can I bring to the table? And that energy is something that I feel when I read a book. When I love a book, I know that the author's passionate about what they're doing. And in terms of work for hire, it's like I can only do work for hire if I really love the property. I can do work for work's sake. We're all professionals, but the stories that really sing are when I have a passion for those characters and I'm adding to the mythos, which is such an honor, but then also really cool. Like you were saying, Joe, about like immortalizing yourself in some way. And just sharing experiences. I'm not a theme writer in that I don't open the blank document and say, this is the theme of the book I'm working on. It's really something I see in the rear view. I'm like, oh, I really like to write about characters overcoming trauma and painful experiences to become like the self that they hoped to be, which is very relatable, I think, but it's something that I only see looking back. But that seems to be what I tend to gravitate towards. But I also like to just explore things that I'm keen on. Like my next crime novel's a mob story, but my next book is a horror novel with a lot of explorations about going back home and the trauma we experience going back home and how we kind of re-engage with that. And so it keeps me on my toes. I think and that's what I love about it, that I get to explore these worlds and people that I wouldn't normally see in my day to day.
Definitely. And I think that authenticity you were talking about is something that we really are seeing more, right? The book that you want to see in the world. I think
Mhm.
one of the really positive changes to publishing that's happened in the last, handful of years is that not only are more voices being heard, but the stories are no longer fitting into what felt like a curriculum of publishing of like, we have to have the next Gatsby, so we need to follow all of the hallmarks of that. We have to have the next Asimov, so we have to have all the hallmarks of that. Like there is so much play within genres and within spaces that crossover books in just the sense of it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that are welcomed and expected rather than we don't really know how to market and sell this one.
Yeah, I mean, not to disturb the apple cart too much, but genre is a marketing term.
Yeah,
When you write
absolutely.
a story, you shouldn't think, well, it's going to be this with a little bit of this. Maybe that's just it's my perspective. I mean, it doesn't not a universal take, but the marketing team will then determine where to shelve your book or how to push it. But if you're writing a book, don't limit yourself because you don't think it fits into the bucket that you are pre-assigning to your work.
I strongly agree with you there, Alex. Like,
Oh,
I've occasionally come across people that try to do the algorithm. They try to like crack the code and like
hmm
it invariably fails, and it's also really sort of disingenuous, like from the
Yes.
bottoms up.
yeah.
But then when people find like a really great reason, like here's the reason I wrote this book, if they have a good answer to that, then whether or not some focus group decided that's what the book should be, there's veracity to it that makes the book a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's also like if you're chasing the trend will be over by the time you write the book. So it's, you have to write something that you're
Yeah.
excited about.
Right. No matter how fast things get, there is still a
Yeah.
timeline to publishing. Like I think of like the people in the space when Twilight blew up and how it was like, well, we have to write every teen vampire novel we can imagine. It's the only way forward. And I'm sure a longtime listener now just put like another tick on the counter of like, oh, did Joe mention Twilight in an episode? Someone reset the board. But
We're
but
at
I think
zero
of
again.
we're back to it's been
Yeah.
0 days. But I think of that and I think of the like I remember like a friend in my life who was like, I'm gonna write this because this is what's hot right now. And it wasn't good because he didn't care about it. It was just to meet that. And he spent so long trying to make it perfect that by the time it was done, he didn't want to write anymore. And that's all he wanted to do was write, but he didn't write himself. He didn't write that truth. Now, I think speaking in the evolution of kind of the space, what are some of the things that you have all noticed? I mean, going from techno thriller to cyberpunk to spec fic, like what big shifts have you noticed in recent years, kind of in the corners that you all haunt? Or anything that stands out, anything you're hoping to see kind of like looking ahead as well?
I think something you said, Joe, that's very true is that we're seeking out stories that people have a shared authentic experience with. And I think that's
Mhm.
important. I also think there's always pushback to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear writers say, well, I can't write whatever I want. And you can write whatever you want, but there is now a greater sense of backing up your work, doing the research, whether it's a authenticity read or making sure you've spoken to people who have lived that experience. And it's it's not that different in sci-fi. Sure, maybe they're happening in outer space or whatever, but you're still getting a greater variety of story, a greater variety of experience. And I think that's really valuable because I think genre is a construct and these stories can kind of blend together, like have a sci-fi noir story or have a sci-fi horror story, or there's obviously even other ways to drill down, but I would love to see publishers really push for that and continue to support that, as opposed to supporting it hesitantly and then hoping that it works. You know what I mean?
The thing that I've noticed that's particularly interesting to me is just the change in the way reading communities are now more social than ever.
Mhm.
Readers are discovering books through social media, and readers now have many more spaces to discuss books. And I think that changes the dynamic of how readers think about reading and how authors think about what they do. I think I wouldn't necessarily say these trends are positive or negative. They're just different. The fact that readers now have a lot more places to talk about books and ways to find other people who enjoy the books they enjoy, I think that has been a net positive. That has allowed the careers of a lot of mid-list authors to become a way better than they would be otherwise. Just having that sort of social media sustainability, allowing people to discover backlists and to realize that people have written these things. I think that's wonderful. I would like to see again that trend develop in more healthy, positive directions. One of the things about the internet is that it tends to create this effect where the winners keep on winning, and then you have sort of this a winner take all kind of dynamic. I think reading can possibly resist that and allow
Mhm.
many more voices to succeed. There's plenty of room for everybody. We don't need, the giant mega stars to take over everything. But all in all, I think those are the most interesting trends I've noticed, and I think it's really cool.
I really resonate with that though. I think of my big mission with the like name book lounge is that like you don't have to listen to someone saying, "Oh, I read 100 books this year," and go, "Well, I can't read 100, so I'm not even going to read." Like, read one book. Like, if that's the goal, great. It doesn't matter. It's like it's finding joy. It's finding community. I think post pandemic, a lot of us were searching for community, and the online book spaces, while still powered by the internet, which can be inherently very negative or very dark, and like you said, Ken, some of the winners just continuously win. It also gives us more opportunity to build spaces and then even dictate that like, hey, this is just, yeah, we're going to talk about this book because we loved it, or we're going to like talk a little shit, like whatever, but it's space for everyone.
Yeah, I also like seeing that that diversity that's come up there. I mean, you kind of think of genre as, it is what it is. That's the whole point of genre. If it's science
Yeah,
fiction, then you know what you're going to get, right? If it's horror, you know what you're going to get. And we kind of have, we spent a long time with sort of a monolithic front of a few authors that were really delivering
Yeah.
great science fiction, the classics, but it ends up being a little bit culturally stale. And so
definitely.
it's been really fun, as I love science fiction, I love genre, but getting to see it get cracked through different cultural perspectives. And suddenly you're like, oh, right. So this is the thing I love, but it's a new flavor. And so having people lean into it in that way has been really fun. And not just, culture, even, you think of like Murderbot, even just sort of
Mhm.
like mental diversity and gender diversity and yeah, and all of that stuff has really created some like the next generation of really great science fiction, I feel like.
I think that the different flavors is exactly it because right when I look at a season, when I try to think of what are we gonna talk about, it goes back to like those monoliths, those hallmarks of like here's a genre, and then when I sit with that, I go, but it's yay, it's no longer those things anymore. Like my love of sci-fi has developed over the years once it started cracking open into the like I was a Star Trek kid, but once it turned into like, oh, there's all of these things you love from other places meshing together and you get to see through the lens of someone else. You get to see you said Murderbot, the concept of like here's just like AI killing machine now with new and improved features in a brilliant series, and you go like, oh, it's different things are happening, and how fun and
Oh
exciting
yeah,
is that?
using the killer to explore sort of
Right.
awkward interpersonal interactions, so it's too much fun.
So it sounds like we all want this to kind of like go and grow, and I'm also thinking along the language of audience. You all probably deal with a lot of like really passionate fans. I feel like this comes from a place, Alex, I'm thinking of your poor inbox when you're working in IP, but
Yeah.
also just working on your own stuff. How have you all felt with especially the like now more people can find because of the internet, also more people can be heard because of the internet. How have conventions and panels and all of that gone for you? And what are some things that stick out? Like, does it impact your perspective? Does it impact your work? What's the deal when the rubber hits the road with fans for everyone?
For me, it's I love to hear from readers. I love to hear when a story has affected them ideally in a positive way, but you want to hear how they respond to the work. I think early on, the internet can be so parasocial. Like I think this is around the time my first book came out. People would come up and say, "Oh, how are your kids doing?" And that's when I really like kind of pulled back on posting family stuff on social media, or even just like I try to stick to the rule that I don't have to comment on everything. Like it's okay to let the discourse be the discourse. And I think social media can be challenging to navigate. But I love hearing from fans. I love connecting with readers. I think that re-energizes me in a way that uh, helps propel me to the next project. That idea that people are engaging in this stuff because we work in solitary. I mean, I'm at home, but I'm by myself at my desk, kind of for hours on end, and then to hear that these things that I'm doing on my computer are actually being printed and people are consuming them and enjoying them for the most part is great. Yeah, and fans are fans, and you have to really admire the passion. Sometimes I'll, particularly with Star Wars or superhero stuff, little details are kind of the bread and butter of a lot of these worlds, which is cool. Like I was on that side too for a long time, and you get questions like, "Well, this doesn't match up with what happened here," and you just kind of take it with grace. And sometimes we're wrong. There's a human creating these stories, and sometimes the humans are wrong. So, um, and it comes from a place of passion, and 99.9% of the interactions are positive and cheerful, and people are excited to talk to the person that's creating these stories, and that 0.1% you just hope to brush off.
Absolutely. And even with like, gosh, you're dealing with canons that how many people have touched that you're like,
Right.
eh,
Yeah.
a little bit of understanding.
Yeah, you can't just say, "Oh, it's all pretend." I mean, there's a lot of emotional value and a lot of
Right.
emotional investment in these stories, so you have to give readers as much grace as you want to receive as well. Like, be thought, it all comes from a good place, hopefully. So,
different fandoms have different sort of expectations. And I wrote for DC for a couple of years. I wrote the Earth 2 Society stuff.
Yeah, I
And
remember that.
Cool. Yeah.
I had
I
a
think I
great
was
time
working at
doing that.
DC at the time.
Oh, well, yeah, you're so familiar. Yeah, and we must have been
I
in
was in house and I was a publicist at DC for a long time, and I remember,
okay. I was working
okay,
with Mike Cotton, and yeah,
yeah,
it was right when they transitioned and they moved over to Warner Brothers
hmm
in in Burbank or whatever. But so I ended up going to Comic-Con, right? And I would do a fan panel for the comic, and then I'd do one for whatever science fiction novel I had written. And like I'll never forget, like I did this Earth 2 thing where they went to a new star system, and most star systems are binary. And so I made it a binary star system with a red sun and a yellow sun. So it was going to mess around in a complicated way with the powers of anybody from Krypton, right? Any of my super characters like Val-Zod and Power Girl and stuff. And so I was so into this. I did all of the orbital dynamic. I like got a simulator. I figure out where they were out of the sky, and nobody cared. All they cared about was the costumes, and the art, and which is fair because it's comics, right? And
hmm
then I went across the hall and like to talk, about some novel, and it was all about the world building, and the fans were and I was like loving it. I just realized I totally vibe more with the science fiction fans than with the comic book fans. And I feel like all of us are fans too, right? So it's like, what do you love the most, and where do you get your satisfaction and pleasure from consuming this stuff? And so yeah, I remember realizing, oh my God, like, yeah, these are different people. Like this, all these fandoms are different mindsets. People have different things they love, and so it was an eye-opening experience for me.
As you're
I
also
think
just
that
that
like,
really
could you go across the hall to my other panel and talk about the world building I did for this comic,
Yeah, can I
please?
please bring you guys over? Do you people read comics? Why not? Why not?
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I mean, the fact that, fandoms have different conversations, and there are some conversations in which you participate in some conversation in which you just don't. I mean, when I wrote my Star Wars novel, there were wonderful fans who really loved what I did because they were interested in the same things that I was interested in. But, I also recognize that fandom is large and not all fans are interested in the same thing. And so there are just conversations and there are ways in which fans interpret what I did that are just not at all what I was interested in. And that is entirely okay. I don't have to be there for every conversation. And recognizing that you can be part of the fandom and do what you do and have, all of us are contributing to this larger conversation. It is a collective storytelling exercise when all of us fans are engaged in it. The universe doesn't belong to any individual. We are all part of it, and it's great to pick the ones in which you are able to contribute and add to it, and then to step away from the ones in which you're not.
Well, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with playing in someone else's sort of sandbox,
yeah.
right? Whenever you're taking on Star Wars characters, for crying out loud, or with Crichton, like writing a sequel to the Andromeda Strain, it's like you're on a tightrope on some level, and you owe it to the fans to like get as much right as you possibly can. But it's a uniquely terrifying thing operating with other people's IP. I feel like that some sense it feels like just going home whenever you just get back to your own something with just your name on
Yeah.
the cover, you know. And
Well,
it's
it's
like,
also
okay,
you
this is my
wanna
house.
you wanna retain your voice. That's the challenge. You want to
Yeah.
Yeah.
retain your voice, and you also understand there's no way you can make everyone happy. So as long as you're still
Uh-huh.
true to your voice and your writing style, and you're connecting with your own fandom, which I try to do, is I try not to be fan servicey in my
Mhm.
work. Like, you want to give fans what they need, not what they want. And so
Yeah, they don't
sometimes
know what
that's
they want.
yeah, exactly. So
They
Or
think
what
they
sometimes
they
do.
need.
They don't know what
sometimes
they
you're going to
want.
frustrate readers, and I think as long as you're true to your own authorial voice or are writing to yourself, then that's all you can do.
Definitely. It's really interesting to hear from the three of you who like are in the depths of what fan interactions could really make or break for all of you to go like, no, I know what I signed up for, and we're all in this game together. And even with the like it's fun to play in someone else's sandbox, but it's even better that once you get home to your own house, what keeps you going back to it? What keeps you like trying it out? Like the dance into IP. Is there a fulfillment that comes from it, or
I've done a few pieces of IP work, and I'm pretty choosy about it. I will be honest that I'm not. I don't seek out IP work in particular, and I don't do a lot of it. What little I've done, I've been very choosy. I mean, in the case of Star Wars, it was a very unique thing. Star Wars was very special to me as a child. It was incredibly important to me as a fan. The universe was indeed extremely special to me. In fact, I remember when I was in college, there was this economics final exam coming up, and I wanted to motivate myself to study. And so the way I did it was I went out to the bookstore and bought 3 new Star Wars books. And I said I would study a chapter and then read a chapter of this book to keep myself motivated. Now, what actually happened was I started reading the novels and I could not stop. And so I read all 3 overnight. And then in the morning, I did 0 study and then had to actually go take my exam after pulling an all-nighter in which I read Star Wars books and did no studying. So, it's very special to me. And so when I was invited to contribute, of course I would say yes. It's not something that I would do for any other franchise, but it was absolutely special to me. So I wanted to do it
Mhm.
because I wanted to live this dream that I had as a kid. I think that's probably true for a lot of us.
But don't you think they take advantage of us a little because like
Oh yeah.
Oh
there
yeah,
is
for
this
sure.
crazy draw with the work for hire. Like I had to broke my heart, but I had to turn down a novelization of Bishop, from the Aliens franchise, and like because the what they were offering for a novel, was like absurd, and I was just like, look.
100%, Daniel. 100%.
I would love to contribute to the canon of this really amazing, iconic and or synthetic, but like, come on, at the end of the day, like that's gonna take me at least half a year, and like I have a family, like what? And so yeah, I don't know.
I mean, they definitely get
Sometimes
a
the
head
work.
start because they're tapping into your childhood. They're saying, well, I know this person
Mhm.
is a fan of this universe, and then you have to hope the adult kicks in and is like, well, as much as I'd love to do this, is it worth my time? Is it worth the return on the investment? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. For me, it's like playing with the toys, like Ken was saying, like these are things I grew up with. Like I got to write a book for Marvel called Spider Society, which basically featured like all the spider heroes, and I was a big Spider-Man 2099 fan because I got to see like a Latino Spider-Man, which was so cool to me growing up. So, and I wrote a novel with him and Aranya, who's like a teen spider hero. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess you just kind of gauge how much you're willing to burn the candle to get the chance to do it. But it's definitely they're definitely tapping into some your childhood there.
They tie
I
back into
actually
fandom.
I
Yeah.
tend to do the opposite, where you establish IP by writing something, and then that way you can never be taken away from you. Like if it gets adapted for film or a comic or something like that, and then it will always come home to roost. Because I'm also a screenwriter, and I've had situations where I just wrote a spec screenplay and sold it, and then they didn't make it, and it was just gone. And I never get it back, and I can never be able to write a story in that world or
Uh-huh.
use those characters, and it kills me. So now, but all
Uh-huh.
you got to do is just write a little short story, create the IP, and then adapt it, and then now it'll come back to you. And so that's the way to do it. That's the way everybody does it now, as far as I can tell.
Ken, I want to return
Mhm.
to something you said earlier in the conversation, when I was kind of struck by, oh, everything in this most recent book could has the ability to happen today. What do you all do to balance the like deeply human and reality that we live in today with the fiction element? How do you stay grounded personally, and how do you keep your stories, I guess, from like getting lost in space, pardon the pun?
I mean, for me, it's pretty easy. I mean, I know I'm limited as a human being. I mean, I can only think like a human, so I know that whatever I imagine, no matter how out there, fundamentally, these stories are interesting to me because there's some human element to it. I'm telling. I mean, I do sci-fi a lot, but my sci-fi really feels to me like mythology at their foundation. What I'm doing really is telling mythological stories that happen to have robots and aliens in them. They're interesting to me precisely because they map to these very deep human patterns. And so for me, I don't get lost because the only reason I'm interested in these stories is because they are deeply human in this mythological sense for me.
Yeah.
I can't do it any other way. So for me, that's just the way I think. I do admire authors who are not constrained that way. You know, people who say that they just don't really feel they're confined or limited by their humanness, and they can really imagine things that are not human. I think that's wonderful. I can't do that, and so my stories are deeply human.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I constrain myself in the same way. I choose the science fiction to amplify whatever I'm trying, underlying theme, usually a human thing, that I'm trying to convey. And so then, you just keep that, you choose a high concept. It's like you get one magic wish and then everything else needs to be pretty much, on the rails. I've seen lots of different ways to get people, for instance, you think about, oh geez, like The Expanse or something like where you have a hugely complex world, or was it Altered Carbon, where you have this hugely complex world. It's science fiction. It's all set in the future. There's too much stuff going on, but then you just make it a detective story, and it's like, okay, now we're on the rails. Like I understand what
Yeah.
a detective story is, and so you can have a marvelously complex world, but just put me on the rails so I can understand how to enjoy it. Um, but like also just sticking to that one high concept really can emphasize whatever you're trying to say. Like I have a short story called Bastion that's about uh, a guy who's got his son is on a spaceship, and then there's a robot uprising. The robots flee the solar system, and they take the ship with his son. And the story starts when his son comes back 18 years later, and he's a man. And the robots took care of him, kept him alive, but they're also the people that stole him. And it's all about having an adopted child. It's all about birth parents versus adoptive parents and like all that complex stuff that's happening there. And of course, robots. So like, but having just that one high concept and then you get to pick apart all these complex emotions, as a result of it.
Yeah, totally. I agree with what everyone said, but I think it's really boils down to character. You have to have characters that people care about that have human flaws and are complicated. And, that gives you entree into the high concept or into the kind of the tropes that you're trying to play with. I love, like Daniel said, I love playing with the PI story in different genres, whether it's horror or sci-fi or the idea of the tainted knight kind of exploring this world and showing you the cracks. I think the stories that interest me most are, broken or flawed people exploring these gray areas where you don't definitively know what the right or wrong thing to do is. And I find that compelling as a reader. And I think that's really my guidepost to whether it's interesting as a writer. If something
Yeah,
interests me as a reader, then hopefully it'll interest somebody else.
absolutely. Now, as we start to wind down, knowing there is so much knowledge in this room and there is just so much out there, if someone wanted to get started reading in sci-fi, where would you direct them? Do you have an entry point? Do you have or favorites that you want to shout out, or debuts that you've noticed that you're like, oh, this is what's up and around? Anything like that? I know I saved the hard hitting question for the end. Can you think of the stacks of books in your head and pull one out?
I mean, this is like one of those embarrassment of riches kind of questions. We're living through such a golden age of speculative fiction. I mean, you can recommend all the wonderful classics, but also newer writers are just coming up with amazing concepts and wonderful stories left and right. I will recommend a relatively recent book. It's Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. It's a space opera, but it's a revitalization of space opera in a way that I think is very beautifully done and ethically provocative. It's incredibly emotional too, despite the high concept. So I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And also, as someone who has a very classics kind of imagination, the various Greek references really got to me. So anyway, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I could go with the classics, but I think about authors a lot too. Authors that like to push genre boundaries and do new things. I really love Sylvia Moreno Garcia's work. I think she plays in sci-fi, she plays in horror, she plays in noir, and so it's really for me whenever she has a new book out, it's an event because I know it'll be interesting and I know it won't fall into just a bucket.
I know I'm in for a treat when
Yeah, you know you're in for a treat. Like the same with Rebecca Roanhorse or Delilah Dawson.
yeah.
Like these are authors that I just admire as people and also their skills. Like they always entertain me. So for me, it's less about, oh, what's the next great new sci-fi novel? Our Wives Under the Sea, this is more of a horror novel, but it has sci-fi elements by Julia K. Armfield, is a great meditation on relationships and what happens with long-term relationships, particularly queer relationships. And I just found it mesmerizing, and it was so short, but it was also so impactful. So on the surface, yes, it's a horror sci-fi novel about a sea expedition gone awry, but it's really about what happens when you live with someone for 15 years and they change and you change. Like, are you still in love with them? Like, and that's the kind of fiction that really resonates with me that, speaks to me on various levels. So,
Absolutely.
I would say, inspired by the way things are going lately, that there's a long tradition of science fiction being used to tell stories out in the open that you can't necessarily just say out loud. And so I maybe recommend Roadside Picnic. The Strugatsky brothers, they were writing during the USSR and Soviet Russia, I guess, and they were heavily censored, and yet they were able to tell their stories. The Doomed City. There's a bunch of good ones, but Roadside Picnics,
hmm.
that's the famous one, and it's a classic, and I always recommend that to people. Also, I kind of like it because I always like it when the antagonist or like when the setup doesn't it puts humans in our place. We like to anthropomorphize things so much, and it's always all about us. But this is a book about aliens that come and go and literally stop on Earth to have the equivalent of a roadside picnic, and they leave a bunch of trash, which happens to be incredibly complex and advanced and dangerous. And then we're rooting we're rooting through it like the primates we are, and I always kind of like that. It puts us in our place, and it's just such a unique, fascinating setting, and so grounded and real. To have science fiction there. So,
Yeah.
Roadside Picnic's my choice.
Ooh, thank you. I love when we can sneak in some good book recs. Now we're gonna move into our lightning round to close things out. Question number one, very important. Kirk or Janeway?
Janeway,
Janeway for me.
Same.
or Zap Brannigan.
I'm a Kirk guy. Like TOS is what got me started. So as much as I love Voyager,
Valid, valid. Would you rather explore outer space or the depths of the ocean?
Ocean.
Yeah, I
outer
gotta say
space.
space. Yeah, space for me too. There's too much complicated, interesting stuff happening out there.
Absolutely. If you could bring one piece of technology to life right now, what would it be? Could be from any property, could be of your own making.
Oh, I think that transporter would be super helpful.
Yeah,
I just hate
let's speed
driving
up
or
those
being,
lines.
well,
Yeah.
just get me where I need to go.
Yeah, beam me
I
up.
feel like it kills you every time, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
Time machine for me.
time machine. Okay.
I'll go Ansible, faster than light communication.
ooh.
Okay. Oh man. Man, lots of like life-changing options
Mhm.
right there. Is there a trope you never get tired of? Something that when you see it pop up as the like general theme, you're like, all right, I'll lock in for this.
Killer robots, come on, what are you gonna do? This new Alien Earth show, I'm loving.
Oh yeah, it's so good. I'm just a sucker for the PI trope, the kind of flawed hero
Yeah.
who gets caught up in some bigger mess, and they are flawed, but they are the one that is going to save the day. It's really
You
it's kind
you
of
gotta watch
hey,
the
what's the,
lowdown. That's
oh
gonna
yeah, no, I
that's
love
gonna
that
be
show.
your
Yeah,
joint. Okay.
yeah, it's so good.
Uh,
Yeah.
First contact with a child. That's my trope.
Mm.
Oh, that man, all of these are good. And then the last one, if your next story had to be set in an existing sci-fi universe, which one are you choosing? IP work aside.
Oh, I'd love to write something in the Dune space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for me, it's a toss-up between Matrix and Terminator. Like, there are so many things I want to like fix and expand. And
Yeah,
Put it out there,
Pacific
right?
Rim for me.
oh
Oh,
yeah, that's a good one. I just
That is a
rewatched
good
that.
one.
also makes sense with the explore the ocean answer. I feel
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's like some Cthulhu. You should combine Cabin in the Woods and Pacific Rim, get
Oh yeah.
yes. Oh, and now we're just a pitch room. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. Before I let you go, we'll go around the room again, let the people know where to find you, and if there's anything you're wanting to promote right now, that would be great. We'll do the alphabet again. Alex, I'm coming back to you.
Sure. You can find me at alexsegura.com and you can subscribe to my newsletter there. I'm also on Blue Sky and Instagram, easily searchable. My next novel is Daredevil, Enemy of My Enemy, which comes out in March. I'm writing Star Wars for Marvel, Dick Tracy for Mad Cave. I'm also serializing a creator-owned book called The Forgotten Five. So if you love 80s comics like Uncanny X-Men, Legion, Love and Rockets, it kind of blends that idea of like serialized comic book storytelling that is not like beholden to the trade, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And so we post 8 to 10 pages every month, and people can read, and you just sign up and get the books in your inbox.
Very cool.
Um, and I've got a horror novel coming out sometime next year from a gallery called The Moonlight Children.
Awesome. Always love to hear new horror coming.
Yeah.
Daniel, how about you?
Yeah. So my newest one this just came out is called Hole in the Sky. Very smart for me to grab it finally.
Hmm.
My publisher went real literal with the cover. So we got a hole in the sky. But yeah, so I'm excited to have that one come out. I'm adapting it right now for Netflix. Sterling
Very
Harjo's
cool.
attached to direct that adaptation. So I'm writing the screenplay for it right now, but and I'm available at danielhwilson.com. I just have my email on there. People just email me. It doesn't seem to have been a problem. So most people are nice. Um, so yeah,
We'll
I,
we'll
I
keep that
welcome
trend going.
Good to
anybody that
know.
wants to reach out to me can reach out to me. So
Awesome.
just go to danielhwilson.com.
Perfect. And Ken.
You can find me on kenliu.com and you can sign up for my newsletter there, browse around to see what books I've got out. The book that I'm promoting now is All That We See or Seem. And if you're at all interested in how I imagine human art will survive the age of AI and what artists will be doing with AI, which is one of my obsessions, that's probably a good book to get. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank
Been
you.
fun. Good to see
And-
everybody.
Yeah, this was what a treat.
Right. And now we'll head into our next segment. You have an incoming transmission from Book Lounge Command. Hey there, cosmic readers and interstellar listeners. We've officially reached the midpoint of our mission. We've just wrapped our sci-fi author roundtable, and before we warp into the galaxy of book recommendations, I wanted to beam in a quick thank you. If you haven't already, make sure you're following the show on your favorite podcast platform, and Galactic Decree, leave us a 5-star review. It helps more explorers discover our corner of the bookish universe. If you prefer your book chats with a little visual flair, you can catch our full video episodes on YouTube. Just follow the Libby app YouTube channel for all things Book Lounge by Libby. Got a signal to send back to our mission control? You can reach me by sending an email to bookloungebylibby@overdrive.com. And for our bonus content, sneak peeks, and Libby Life exclusives, jet over to libbylife.com/booklounge. Now, re-engage your grav boots and prep for segment 2. We're heading into book recs at light speed. Well, hey, y'all. Welcome to this portion of Book Lounge by Libby. We are going deeper into outer space. This time, we are ramping up your TBR. We have set our phasers to too many books to read. It is our continuation of science fiction double feature, and now we have our recommendations for you. Joining me are the incredible, the multi-talented, the multifaceted Cece and Meara here to delight us all. Hi, how y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Hi.
I'm, energetic. I'm galvanized and ready to take the crown.
Wow. Okay. Let's
Yeah.
go.
This is some great
Monday.
energy.
We're having Monday. Well, thank you both for being here. I am always excited when I send out the editorial calendar to be like, this is what's happening this season. What do you want to recommend for? Because we're like halfway through season 2. I guess at the time this is coming out, we're most of the way through season 2. There's just a few episodes left. And I'm starting to get to know what all of you like, but I will still always be surprised by who comes back saying, I need to do that one. I have to do that one. And so I'm still learning all of you, but when I threw sci-fi out there, this one I had no clues. Or Cece, maybe I knew you would be. I think I knew you would be here.
I do love some sci-fi, but no, I understand. There's so much range in sci-fi that
Yes.
I think that that's the thing. It's so hard to predict who's reading what when there's so much in one genre.
That's
So
what I was gonna say because you have like broy sci-fi
same thing with fantasy. You get like real broy fantasy.
exactly. But then like the kind of sci-fi that I like the spec fic side of sci-fi.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think sci-fi brings a lot to the table in that a lot of people find their way into the genre either through the spec fic, through some of the other like first encounter kind of like there's a lot of different ways that people come about it. I'm thinking of now a pick that I might need to me quickly updating my list because of a sentence I said while we sit here. So I will be doing that.
You know that Leslie Knope quote where she's like, I'm big enough to admit that I'm inspired by myself. That's you right now.
Oh, it's true. That my toxic trait is I love myself, but I hate the way I am. What brought both of you into sci-fi, just generally and then specifically in the world of books? Because I think there's a lot of avenues to get to sci-fi one way or another.
So sci-fi like rides closely by fantasy in terms of like monsters and like zombies, Frankenstein kind of elements. Like I feel like that's very like, is it fantasy or is it sci-fi? Like it kind of goes both ways depending on like the world that it's in. And I was always obsessed with like those kinds of stories. I think specifically the book Generation Dead, which I loved when I was in like 7th, 8th grade, kind of like a precursor to Disney's Zombies. And I feel like that's kind of sci-fi-y. And then that moved me into a like YA dystopian fields. There was this book, Candor by Pam Backers, and that got me into the Unwind Dystology and then the Hunger Games. And like, we just take off from there.
And then once you say that, it all lines up and it all makes sense. And I go, I should have known Meara would be slamming her fist down on this episode.
I know, I'm so surprised.
Well,
And that's what we're saying about sci-fi is so big. You were thinking this part of sci-fi, I was on this part of sci-fi.
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cece, what about you? What brought you into sci-fi?
I think it was definitely genre crossover where I was reading so much like middle grade fantasy as a kid. And I think I remember it was Margaret Peterson Haddix who's still writing middle grade sci-fi.
Yes.
But her books like defined my middle school years. And I think the other thing that I really started to like cross over in terms of things I love is I love fantasy that's about a group of characters just going on a quest, going on a journey. And as I was starting to get more into sci-fi as an adult, I think those are the kinds of sci-fi stories I gravitated towards. It was like my love of Star Trek, my love of characters getting together, solving a problem, but also building those relationships. And, maybe science and space exploration too. And I think it just made my world bigger. And yeah, Margaret Peterson Haddix for sure. But I think it has to be Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers that made sci-fi one of my like central genres that I read.
Absolutely. I think the like welcoming of space opera as a part of I don't know, part of what was coming to me while we were both talking was the idea of like when I think of my childhood in the library, when they used to put like classification stickers on the side of books that were like genre specific, and you had the little magnifying glass for the mysteries, and then science fiction and fantasy were always lumped together, and it was always a unicorn, at least in my home system, but it was always sci-fi fantasy. And so my brain has always lumped them together. And I think until recently, with so much of the exploration in fantasy, where we were seeing cozy fantasy and romantasy and like the reclassification, I guess, of the genre or the expansion of it, or it's not even expanding. It's as Travis Baldry said, it's like always been there. We're just now actually calling it out, kind of thing. I think some of that happened similarly with sci-fi, or it's like we're now at the beginning of that happening with sci-fi, where now is the time when they're going to start to. This feels like the bold frontier, to borrow from Star Trek. Like this feels like the last unconquered genre. But then when you start to dive in a little bit, you see the space opera, you see the inclusivity built into the narratives, you see so many things that I think people might just not be aware of. So I'm excited for episodes like this where we get to go, yeah, I don't know if I talk too much about sci-fi, but it's time to do that a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are like, I don't like sci-fi. Like I tried
Mhm.
Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, or I tried, I don't know, someone recently talked to me about the Bobiverse, and it's like, I don't know, like 17 books or something like that. And they're like, I don't want to do that. And so I like when
Right.
we get to talk about genres here, and it's like, well, actually, these things are that too. And people can be like, oh my God, wait, that sounds like something I would read.
You can actually just pick up one book and it is a standalone, and
Yeah.
you can just have a good time. Like not everything is Discworld, and no shade to Discworld, but that's like how many books?
Yeah, and honestly, right now, it feels like novellas are so much,
Mhm.
like, at the center of the conversation. There are so many people reading novellas. There's so much sci-fi and spec fic when it comes to novellas and short fiction, and that makes it, I think, even easier to explore the genre. So, yeah, if you're looking for an opportunity, if you're worried about something being, like, overwhelming, there's so much sci-fi novella stuff out there,
So many
and it
ways.
is so varied.
That's I often say the advice piece of like, if you are looking to get into a genre, turn to middle grade, turn to YA, and like test the waters there, especially with middle grade, to let that be your sneak in. But novellas, specifically in sci-fi, like it's enough to give you the character building and a full journey to see if you want to taste a little bit more. But should we boldly go into some book picks?
Indeed, we
I
should.
I'm gonna kick us off, if you don't mind. I'm gonna be dramatic and just dive in. I'm gonna start off with the book that I thought of while we were talking. So, what I was going to say in that moment before I distracted myself and thought of a book to recommend today was first contact stories. Those kind of like first contact alien encounter stories are often something we don't think about. And like looking at the genre classifications in on this book, fantasy is what pops up rather than like sci-fi. But and you have a long time. I guess slight spoilers, but this is The Bones Beneath My Skin by TJ Klune. It is a beautiful queer love story of found family and building a life together. And I would say this follows all of the hallmarks of when you think sci-fi, this has a lot of the story beats and notes you expect to hear, but it's a spine-tingling standalone novel. So again, standalone. I know TJ is known for a lot of his series, but it's a supernatural road trip thriller featuring an extraordinary young girl and her two unlikely protectors on the run from cultists and the government. That's enough words for me. That's all that I need. But there's nothing more human than a broken heart. In the spring of 1995, Nate Cartwright has lost everything. His parents are dead, his only brother wants nothing to do with him, and he's been fired from his job as a journalist in Washington, D.C. With nothing left to lose, he returns to his family's summer cabin outside small mountain town of Roseland, Oregon, to try and find some sense of direction. The cabin should be empty, but it's not. Inside is a man named Alex, and with him is an extraordinary 10-year-old girl who calls herself Artemis Darth Vader. Artemis, who isn't exactly as she appears. Soon it becomes clear that Nate must make a choice. Let himself drown in the memories of his past or fight for a future he has never thought possible. Because the girl is special, and the forces are descending upon them who want nothing more than to control her. So that is The Bones Beneath My Skin by TJ Klune. It is a beautiful story. I feel like TJ does like love and loss so gorgeously. On the trigger warning front, of course, this is set in the 90s, so there's some homophobia. Of course, there is death. So, be thoughtful before you pick this up, because while it is like central to what makes Nate Nate, it is not ever present or like super whatever within the story, but still just consider that before you dive in. And if you haven't read it, oh, read it.
My embarrassing confession is I haven't read anything by TJ Klune.
Well, Meara, we're going to have to change that.
I know.
The
I
same
have.
confession. I know.
Oh my God, T.
Well, we're done here.
I'm so sorry.
So we've been fired from the podcast.
So
Yeah,
I
no,
gotta
that's
go. You two just give your notes. It's fine. I'll come back and end the
Oh my
recording.
God.
Really? Never?
No, and I have the house in the Cerulean Sea.
You know, you
We
know
have to book
what?
club it.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes. New episode just dropped. I will be guiding you two through the house in the Cerulean Sea at the very least. You know what? Get the
Get TJ on the
audiobook.
episode.
Yeah.
You have him back for a third time.
He's clearly a friend of the podcast.
Clearly. But listen to the audiobook. It's narrated by Daniel Henning. It's incredible. For The House in the Cerulean Sea, specifically, that's one of my all-time favorites. It's the book that healed me when I was having a really hard time one winter season. So
Okay.
it's incredible, and he does voices like you wouldn't believe. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I
Okay,
love
sold.
that. Okay.
So go get the book in Libby. I'll pause the recording, go spend 20 hours listening, and then we'll come back. Well, that's fair. I can forgive you two. But for anyone who's looking to get into TJ, I think this is a great place to dive in, because it is a road trip story. It is a first contact kind of story, and and again, it deals with grief, and I feel like sci-fi and horror, especially horror, deal so much in grief and in processing emotions that we all need a little bit more than we think we do need.
Can I jump off of the theme of grief and dealing with death? Because my first book is The End of Men by Christina Sweeney Baird. This was my first 5-star read of this year, and it is still one of my top 5 reads of this year. I actually picked it for a book club because it is a pandemic novel that starts in 2025. And so we thought bird flu was happening when I picked this book, and I was like, this is relevant. And then it was too relevant. And it was spooky. Crazy thing you need to know is that she wrote this book before COVID. She was doing final edits during the summer of COVID. And so in this book, it follows 5 main characters, and there is a pandemic that breaks out. So our first character is the doctor who spots patient 0 and realizes that there is something happening. There is a virus that is killing only men. And I thought this was going to be a real misandrist, man-hating book, but it actually makes you very empathetic and sympathetic towards men and women who rely on men and have strong relationships with men, because our second character is a mother. She has a husband and a son, and she is an anthropologist, and she loses both of them to the virus, despite many, many precautions. We have the woman who is the lead researcher in trying to find the vaccine, and she's a lesbian and a misandrist and a capitalist. We have a woman who was a low worker in the English government, and because the men keep dying, she just keeps getting up, and gets to a really high position. And then our last main character is a woman in her mid-20s who worked for the American CDC and gets relocated to the UK to help on the response team, and ends up building a really beautiful life as a consequence of what's happened with this pandemic, where her life in the US was kind of going nowhere. And then we also get little vignettes of women from around the world that are also going through things. So we have this one woman whose husband is abusive, and he's one of the 10% who doesn't fall victim to the pandemic. And she's like, why can't it take him? We have a woman who lives on a farm with her husband and son, and it's in a really remote area. And so they take in a whole gaggle of teenage boys to try to keep them safe from the virus. And then there's also the whole community rebuilding aspect and restructuring of societies when over half of the world population has died. How do we function? Who does what jobs? How do we reproduce? There's just a lot that comes into play, and a lot of things that we saw happen during COVID and questions that we were asking during COVID that you were like, oh my God, how did she know? In the same way that Octavia Butler in Parable of the Sower, you're like, oh my God, Octavia Butler is a seer. Christina Sweeney Baird is also a seer. It's phenomenal. I recommended that my mom do it for her book club. Half of the women did not like it. They were very upset about it. But I think it's a book that should be really upsetting. So I still consider that a win in my book.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even just from the title, I'm like, yeah, the end of all men. But I think there's something to be said about like, oh, I hope they take some time to sit with why they were upset about the book.
Yes.
And it sounds so good. I feel like I get trapped in it's got to be a story in a spaceship in space, not Michael Crichton, like not like random outbreak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I could jump into mine. It's also sci-fi about grief, and it's also related to aliens because it seems like maybe we all have kind of a type. Um, but the first book I want to talk about is The Seep by Chana Porter. Uh, I recommend this 100% for people who Jeff Vandermeer works for you, if that is your type of sci-fi. It is my type of sci-fi. It's surreal and introspective, and it's character driven and weird, but will make you cry. So, we are introduced to this world. It is a not so distant future that has been dealing for a few years now with what they're calling a soft invasion. So this alien species has invaded. They're like super powerful, and it's called the Seep, and it's made life on Earth a utopia. There's no scarcity, there's no war, there's no illness. Like the Seep seem sort of capable of endless forms of manipulation and creation, all in the endeavor to make like the people and creatures that live on Earth happy. So like one of the things that happens after the Seep comes is that like pretty much everyone on the planet is a vegetarian because the Seep make everyone aware of animals and feeling like empathy for like different practices. It's just like it's become an awareness for everyone to be kind to each other. And our main character is a woman named Trina. She's a butch trans woman, and she is in a unique sort of mourning at the beginning of the story because after years of marriage, her wife has decided to use the abilities of the Seep to change forms and be reborn, basically. And that leaves Trina alone to grieve and to try to find her place in this world, this weird, like ever changing world. So she ends up on an emotional quest. She is trying to save a boy from the influence of the Seep because Trina does not really trust it and has a lot of moral objections to its methods. And she encounters a lot of characters along the way who have all been impacted in different ways by the Seep. Like she has a friend who I think is a bartender who has been transformed into a bear. Like she still speaks full English sentences, but she's, just a bear. It's crazy, it's weird, it's wild, but the point is along all of this, she's like Trina is still confronting kind of this black hole of grief that is consuming her. And the Seep keeps trying to intervene because it is trying to understand why Trina is unhappy and why she would want to keep existing as she is if she's sad. And that's kind of part of why Trina is having issues is she wants to feel her feelings. She has made her body her own and she doesn't want it to be changed by any sort of technological means. And it is a strange, emotional, angry story, but that's because humans aren't predictable. And as much as this species can try to understand us, we feel a lot of weird big things, and creating a utopia isn't just about like fixing everyone's problems. So I really like post-invasion stories. I think that this is really fantastic. People should check it out.
That's incredible.
It sounds like it would be an episode of Doctor Who.
Yes.
Yes,
It
absolutely.
1,000% it sounds like it would be an episode of Doctor Who. Like, I guess I'm just, I don't know, isn't science fiction cool? There's so many different options to choose from. This is me just like going, "Oh, right. I can branch out a little more." Like there are things you can find your like gateway in, and then you can work your way along.
Yeah.
But kind of along this could be a Doctor Who episode. And I know I said it at the beginning, but who would I be if I did not bring a space opera? Because it's just what what a ridiculous treat we get. So I have August Kitco and the Mechas from Space by Alex White. Um, Again, what a title. Like how lovely is that? When an army of giant robot AIs threaten to devastate Earth, a virtuoso pianist becomes humanity's last hope in a bold, lightning-paced Technicolor space opera series from the author of A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. Jazz pianist Gus Kitko expected to spend his final moments on Earth playing piano at the greatest goodbye party of all time, and maybe kissing rock star Ardent Violet before the last of humanity is wiped out forever by the Vanguards, ultra-powerful robots from the dark heart of space, hell-bent on destroying humanity for reasons no one can divine. But when the Vanguards arrive, the unthinkable happens. The mecha that should be killing Gus instead saves him. Suddenly, Gus's swan song becomes humanity's encore as he is chosen to join a small group of traitorous Vanguards and their pilots dedicated to saving humanity. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. That is a
Sounds
90s anime. Like
Yeah, that's literally I was going
this
to
is
say, it
Evangelion. Like
sounds yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
I just I love an amount of absurdity, and I know for those watching, it doesn't seem like I love absurdity from the all black background, but this is where I'm like, insert photos of my
You think the
home.
pink beard didn't give it away?
Well, okay, you're right. There might be a couple tells, but there's just something so absurd about this, and the term space opera will always put me in a place of like, this is going to be good no matter what. There's joy in those words to me, so I'm sat and I'm running with it. So check it out, have fun.
All right. The thread that I'm pulling from your book to my book is robots.
Oh, please.
My next book is Annie Bot by Sierra Greer, which did kind of take over the world a little bit for a second. But if you haven't read it, let me tell you about it. If you saw the movie Companion with Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid, Annie Bot and Companion are pretty similar stories. If you liked one, you'd like the other. I read this in April 2024 and I gave it 5 stars. And I will just read to you the review that I wrote. So I said, the big takeaways: men are trash, nothing new. And we can't let robots become sentient. Also, nothing new. Annibot is from the third-person perspective of an AI robot from a line called Stella's, and this one is owned by a single man in New York City. The book starts 2 years into Annie's existence, which is the name of this robot. Her existence started as a housemaid, but it has transitioned into a sexual role for this man. The unique thing about Annie is that she is set to be autodidactic, which means her system is able to adapt and think to develop a personality. So she goes from being just a vacuuming robot to a thinking, feeling AI. Throughout this book, we see Annie face human experiences that confront her processing and make her more human-like. It's almost a Pinocchio-esque tale of the man's toy wanting to become real. As much as I loved the character of Annie and watching her grow, it also made me fearful and sympathetic to the AI we have today and gave me concern over what the future holds for them. What boundaries do we need to create now? The book didn't pan out as I expected it would have based on the blurb, but I think I like what the book did even more. I'm not left feeling unfulfilled or with unanswered questions. Should also note, it's not a long book. It's a little bit longer than a novella, but I read it in one sitting. It's 240 pages, something that you can just sit down and crank out, and you're going to want to. Everyone that I know who's read it so quickly. It's just like fun and interesting and a little terrifying.
Bring back short books. Sorry. So my most
Real.
important takeaway, like
Yes,
bring back short books.
honestly.
I love the like a little bit longer than a novella, but that Mira, that sounds so good. And it's so pressing right now, especially as we're looking down the barrel of like what is the future of art with AI? What is the
Yeah.
future of our limited resources with AI? And I don't know, why are we not thinking about the dangers of sentient robots?
This is like
Honestly.
the X-rated Black Mirror cousin to A Psalm for the Wild Built.
That makes a lot of sense.
Insane recommendation, but I love it.
Insane comps, but we'll take it. I mean,
I love to draw those little lines.
and we love to have them. But I'm even just thinking about how in the first half of this episode, Ken Liu said in his current promoting book, he's like, well, everything in here exists. All of the technology and things mentioned today already exists and could happen now. And I'm like, don't say that.
Scary.
Don't,
Scary.
I don't want to hear that.
I like what? Oh, I went and saw this play once and it was like about like AI. It's basically like a natural history museum, how we go, except for it was a human history museum and the attendees were AI.
Oh.
And I went home and I was like, I need to throw out my Alexa. Did I know? Because I'm too dependent on her.
Yes.
But I hate that I am.
There are moments when I'm like, is she going to take over my home? So I always say thank you because at least maybe she'll let me live.
I want her to be like, that was one of the good ones.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
He gets a pass because he was kind to me. He'll
was
be my
polite.
pet in the uprising instead of my indentured servant.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always kind to my robot vacuum.
Mhm.
She's just doing her best.
True.
Yep.
She's just making it so I can vacuum a little less.
Don't set her to autodidactic. Don't let her develop thoughts and feelings.
Never.
No.
Yeah.
I don't need my vacuum to have thoughts and feelings.
I
That's
just
going to
need it
make
to
me
do a good
so much
job.
more anxious.
If my
Yeah.
vacuum started screaming because it ran over something it shouldn't have, no. No
Mm-mm.
Or
thoughts,
it,
no
like,
feelings.
Starts behaving passive aggressively because it picked up one too many bobby pins.
Well, you know me, I deal with that problem very severely. Bobby pins all over the floor.
I'm sure. I assumed this was very
Endless.
relatable to you, Joe.
It's super relatable. Cece, your
All
last
right.
book. What is it?
Yes. Well, mine is a little genre crossover. I wanted to talk about some sci-fi horror. It's technically sci-fi thriller, but it's more horror than anything. And sci-fi horror is one of my favorites. The Alien franchise is near and dear to my heart, so had to talk about at least one. So I want to talk about Salvation Day by Callie Wallace. This is centered around an exploration ship called the House of Wisdom. And basically, 10 years before the events of this book, the ship was abandoned after a virus broke out on board and killed all but one passenger. And ever since then, the ship has been sort of this floating tomb in space. But our main character, one of our main characters, Zara, her and her people are hoping that capturing the ship, decontaminating it, and cleaning it is going to give them the opportunity to find a new home after years of being oppressed and cut off from space travel by Earth's government. So it is a high risk, high reward situation. We are avoiding the ship, but perhaps this is going to be their escape. And Zara and her team end up hijacking a transport ship full of university students in order to gain access to one student in particular, Jaswinder, who is our other POV character and is also that one survivor of the House of Wisdom events, and therefore the only person with the biometrics to get Zara and her team back on board. However, once Zara and her hostages are on board, it becomes apparent very, very quickly that no one has been told the truth about what actually happened on board the House of Wisdom and what actually killed the hundreds of people aboard. So there was perhaps a good reason to leave the dead undisturbed. This is super claustrophobic space horror, and I adore that. Like, the fact that you're constantly escaping from situations, but you're still in the vacuum of space. Like, the concept of it makes me anxious, so a whole book set there just, it does make me nervous. But I also think that this book makes you ask really interesting questions about, like, the truth of this world, and it constantly asks questions about who controls the truth and who's entitled to the truth. So I love I love a good conscious commentary on what is happening to us through sci-fi. And the interesting thing about this, I want to say, is also this isn't an enemies to lovers story. Jazz is gay, and like that is a whole separate storyline that he is going on, and that may not be as compelling to some of you, but like to me, that was the interest point, was these two characters being united, and it doesn't evolve into a romance. It's just about survival and the absolutely scary things that are happening on board. So I think more people should check it out. Salvation Day.
Cece, this activated my fight or flight. I got so anxious as you were telling us about this.
Yeah, there's something like once you said claustrophobic, I was like, oh yeah, being on a spaceship would be really claustrophobic. And then everything just set in place.
Absolutely. It's already scary enough to be encountering terrifying things in a spaceship. I cannot imagine, but also I'm going to keep reading stories about it.
What this really activated for me was the like, oh, I think my fall to end of year might be a sci-fi season, which is new for me. Like I've read some, I've read what things come out. Like Antibot's been on my TBR for ages, it feels like, and now it just jumped up. But I'm like, oh, well, every book that you both brought up today, I was like, I'm gonna have to read that. So I think the end of my year might be a little sci-fi heavy.
Can't wait to see your 10 before the end.
Oh man, you're making it sound like I'm a real influencer or something.
Everyone has to put one together. Do we follow it? No.
Never. I think I did do one on the old book nerds Instagram, and who knows if that was followed, but oh, I love it. Well, thank you both for sharing. Is there anything sci-fi that either of you are looking forward to right now? It could be a movie, it could be a show, it could just be another book that you're waiting to get your hands on.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say a show because I talked about Alien. The Alien franchise just had a whole new series called
Oh yeah.
Alien Earth, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And it was also like fascinatingly in conversation with Peter Pan as a story. So like if you're into Alien and literary inclusions in your sci-fi, that, but also because there's the new Predator movie as well in the same universe, new Predator Badlands. I
So
love
you've
some
got
aliens,
you've got all sorts of good alien stuff coming your way.
too.
I'm in like kind of an opposite direction. One, I want to see Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
The origin point of
Absolutely.
sci-fi. And then also Begonia, the Emma Stone movie from the guy who
Oh,
did
yes.
Poor Things. I believe that is
Yes.
also, if not sci-fi adjacent, because the guys think that she is an alien, right?
Yeah,
So I'd call that
I believe
sci-fi.
so. Yeah, I think
Is,
I'd say sci-fi adjacent.
Is the Saltburn one in the Frankenstein? I'm so old. Jacob Elordi, is he
Yes.
the monster? Okay.
I was like, which
I'm
Saltburn
everyone's
one?
dad. So that the boy from Saltburn, the one, the one, not the
The
one,
nice
but the
boy
other
from
one.
Saltburn. The nice tall boy.
I'm everyone's grandma right now. Don't mind me. Look, I've never seen a movie in my life.
Real.
Well,
I just went and saw Paranorman for like the 10th time yesterday, but I saw it in theaters because they remastered it and put it in theaters.
Norman, that's so cute. What a good festivity. Like tis the season.
'Tis the season for real.
Well, that makes me want to see Monster House in theaters.
Mm.
Maybe
I
they'll
haven't seen that in
remaster
a
it
long time.
next.
I mean, I saw it. I saw it in theaters. I'm a little old.
Yep.
Don't worry, I also saw it in theaters.
Yep, I was also.
Good. Well, old enough, right?
Yeah.
I think one of my friends went on her like first date to see Monster House in theaters.
That's so cute.
Ooh,
Oof.
yeah.
Oh, we're in the danger zone of just yapping.
Oh, yeah.
Yapping about first dates to see Monster House. I love it. Well, y'all, you think I mind? I'm reminding myself I can't do it. Y'all, thank you for joining us. Let's go to me in a different outfit doing the outro. All right, crew, we've navigated wormholes of wonder and dodged asteroids of plot twists with today's episode. Our ship is now entering orbit back around your living room So it's time to power down the warp drive, stow your anti-gravity bookmarks, and prepare for the outro. Thank you to our incredible guests in segment 1, Ken Liu, Alex Segura, and Daniel H. Wilson. And thank you, of course, to our guest hosts, Cece and Meara, for the incredible sci-fi book racks. Make sure you do all the podcast things, follow us and rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice, follow the Libby app YouTube channel, comment down below, all the good things. You'll want to be subscribed so you don't miss next week, where we go into Food for Thought, where chefs and food celebs will share their favorite ways to get ready for the holiday season, and our guest hosts will be sharing the books that they're most thankful for. Stay tuned as we beam you back to reality, just barely, while leaving your imagination floating somewhere between galaxies unknown and the next great book you'll be reading. So thank you for joining me today, and as always, happy reading! You can sample and borrow the books from today's episode in the Libby app, or if you're a librarian, find them for purchase in Overdrive Marketplace. Book Lounge by Libby is a proud Evergreen Podcast signature program. Explore more amazing shows at evergreenpodcasts.com. This podcast is produced and recorded by me, Joe Skelly, with editing by Andrew Alonso. Our theme music is High Five by Rex Banner, used with permission. Book Lounge by Libby is presented by the Libby app. Learn more at libbylife.com/booklounge.